Greetings from the ATO Omega National Headquarters in Indianapolis. Today, we're talking with Howe Wallace, who's the president of the nation's largest new pallet manufacturer. He also served as ATO's national president. Back in the day, when Howe was a student at the University of Florida, he joined ATO, eventually becoming chapter president. Throughout his professional career, whether he was in student services on college campuses or moving into human resources or eventually becoming the leader of a major corporation, Howe has credited the wisdom and insights he learned as an ATO running a chapter with many of the practices that he continues to use today. Howe does a great job of connecting his ATO experiences back to his experiences in his company and his family. I'm Win Smiley, and this is the ATO Show. So Howe, thanks for joining us today. When people hear about your business, the largest manufacturer of new pallets, are they surprised? How do they usually react? Because I don't think most people really even think about that being such a robust and big business.
Well, when it's always been interesting, a couple things happen when you say you're in the pallet business. Almost everybody has a pallet story of some sort. Oh, I use those at my campsite, or I had to clean them up once upon a time. But then it's the other part is they very quickly say, I never thought about how those might be manufactured or where they come from. And then the last thing that happens is once we talk about it and I see them again, they say, I now see pallets everywhere I go. I didn't notice them so much. They were in the background, but you can, through the years, there's been this whole move on pallet art on Etsy, and people send me pallet pictures all the time of furniture being built with pallets and all that kind of stuff. And then you always notice, I'll challenge you to notice it in the future, but when you're watching a crime show and there's a shoot 'em up in a warehouse or something, the pallets are always the prop that people are hiding behind. So it's been pretty funny to be involved in this industry for 40 years and have people tell you stories. But there's not anybody. Sometimes I have to tell them it's not the pallet that you put paint on, but it's the pallet that the forklifting. So some people have to understand that distinction, but most people have a good pallet story in their background.
So you grew up in Florida, went to the University of Florida, joined ATO, probably not thinking that you would be running any kind of pallet company, let alone a very large pallet company. So how did you get from an undergraduate at the University of Florida to ATO to pallet company?
Well, so I had a great experience in ATO at Florida. And one of the things it did was expose me to the dean of students and the director of Greek affairs and the vice president of student affairs. And I ended up near the end of my college career, after I've been president at ATO, I got the chance to be an intern with the dean. And I said, I majored in fraternity. I had a major in journalism. I wasn't going to do that. And, I just really didn't know what I was doing, and I loved that internship so much. I said, hey, I'd like to maybe pursue a career as student affairs. What should I do? And they directed me to Michigan State, where both of those guys, the vice president and the dean, had both gone to Michigan State for part of their graduate programs. And I went there. It was successful, working in a dormitory, got my master's degree, took a job at the University of Georgia in charge as director of fraternities, was my title. And I did the IFC thing for a couple years, but my wife and I were beginning to have babies, and I was finding out I couldn't afford to raise a family on a student affairs salary. And so the education that I got in education and higher education lent itself to human resources. And I took a job where I live now in Bartow, Florida, working for a human resources company. And I had another fraternity brother who worked for the Pallet company. And after a couple of years working in the community, they approached me about, they were growing business. They were expanding. So they asked me to come to work for them in human resources. And it was just a great a great place. The guys were entrepreneurs. They wanted to have a leadership team. They responded. They taught you everything about the business that you'd want to know. You got it to sit at the table. You got to have decisions. Your pay determined on what went on. And so I just became a generalist in the pallet business. I'm going to play. I want to win, and I want to know how it goes. And so I just became involved in it, and got to be a speaker in the industry, because I used to tell my mom that I was the best HR person in the pallet industry, but I never told her I was the only one. It's not an industry that has a lot of those.
Right.
And so, but because I got known, there came a point where we started to expand by buying other pallet companies, and I got to be in the role of going in and making that initial inquiry. Hey, do you want to? We're buying these companies. We're a public company at that point. We're buying people like you. If you're interested, let me hook you up. And then if we were able to secure a deal, then I would go back and work on the integration from an HR standpoint. So I got to be pretty involved in that. And at some point, we went through several iterations. And at some point, we ended up actually just buying our businesses back. And I was the chief cat herder. And so they made me the CEO. And that's how we started, 23, 24 years ago. So it was a convoluted route, but it worked well for me.
Yeah. So what don't people really know about working in the pallet industry? I'm assuming you work with a lot of blue collar folks, but also there's probably a lot of technology involved, especially today in manufacturing, especially a large manufacturer of pallets. What's the dynamic? What's the culture like as it relates to just the people in the pallet industry?
So you're right. It is heavily blue collar. We used to have a lot of immigrants, and then when they tighten up on immigration, it's a felony to hire immigrants that aren't legal to work, and we took a path that just moved away from that. But we take a lot of the folks who come to work for a pallet company. They're local to the area. Doesn't require an education. We can look away from having had a legal record or that kind of stuff. So we work with a lot of blue collar labor. But and initially, I got offered to work for the pallet industry, and I turned it down because I had a master's degree. I didn't want to go work in that, but I've grown to love it a great deal, because what I've learned is those folks are, just because they didn't have a break in their lives doesn't mean they're not smart. And there are lots of people that we're looking for that need an opportunity and want an opportunity, and we're bound and determined to give it to them. But you're correct. Most people who come to see us they expect us to put pallets together with hammers and nails. And we have machinery, and we have high process sawing, and automation is getting more and more involved in it. As automation gets cheaper and labor gets more expensive, we're adding automation in a lot of places, and you wouldn't expect it to be what it is. If you went and Googled our company and looked at some of the slideshows or the videos that we put on our website, you'd be surprised at the level of automation that we show there. And it's only going to get more. That's a fact, because we just don't have that many workers who want to do it the old school way we used to, and we don't want to do it the old school way we used to. But it used to be very physical, very dirty, very sweaty, very demanding, and that's not what people want to do these days. So we're experimenting all the time with ways we can automate the process.
Yeah, knowing you, I'm guessing that there is a path for success for anyone who starts on the very ground floor of Pallet One. Any stories come to mind just in terms of people who you hired that didn't have a break, were sort of on hard luck? They came to work for you, and they have just followed a path of great success within the company?
Yeah, once you come through the door with us, we don't worry about your record or your education anymore. So if you're hardworking, we're looking for leaders. We have all sorts of work settings where 3 or 4 or 5 people team up to run a saw system or to run a pallet machine or that kind of thing. So We measure performance heavily, so we look for people who like to keep score, like to win, like to be the best in their deal. And if you do all those kinds of things, then you get promoted without regard. We don't ever return to your resume to see what you did. We're looking at what you've done for me lately and what your potential is. And when we see that you have it, we're going to give you more and more experience on training and those kinds of things so that you can get advanced. So the success stories I have been, we have probably numbers of people that we recruited from a work release program from a prison, and they came into our situation and they flourished. People say, "Will you hire prisoners?" Yeah, we do. And it works out for us because we found that once they come in, we don't identify them as a prisoner anymore. We identify them as a teammate, and we express to them, hey, there's going to be opportunity. So I've had numbers of people like that. We certainly have had people with not very sophisticated educations that have been able to take on leadership roles for us and do a good job. I mean, I don't know if that's good enough stories, but we certainly have them. They're people
Right.
are proud of with that.
Right. So it's probably encouraging for you to see that kind of transformation.
Sure. I mean, it resonates with me certainly as a guy who loves our creed, it's a true merit kind of thing, isn't it? To be able to say to somebody, hey, I was just reading even today about, hey, respect those people that come in the door. And the perfect golden rule idea is I'm going to respect people like I want to be respected. And I'm going to insist that we all do that. And so when you can get by, I've had old school supervisors who believed, hey, they're not capable of those kind of things. And piece by piece, we've just kind of run those old school supervisors off, and we teach a lot. Hey, love these folks, care about them. They want to have a life too. Teach them how to be. So we work hard on that kind of thing, and some people flourish under that leadership.
Yeah, so let's go back to ATO and your undergraduate experience. You were chapter president, so did you go into the fraternity thinking that I want to be in a leadership role in this chapter? And once you got into that leadership role, what did you learn? What stuck with you?
When I joined our chapter, I was just looking for community. I'd been to school one term already, and I was lonely. And I had some roommates who lived across the hall from me, or not roommates, but dorm mates, and they had pledged. And it got to be rush. January came when they were rushing again, and they invited me to go over. And man, I was just wanting a bid. I wasn't thinking I'd be president. I just wanted to have a chance to be in the fraternity. And I found the community I cared about. I loved being part of it. I tried to be a good new member. I tried to get to know the people, which is by side again. If I'm going to be a part of it, I'm going to play, and that's what we did. So mostly I got into leadership because I had a real interest in the new member program. So I always was on point with the class. I was no one. We had back in the day, one person could keep a member from a pledge from joining, and I made it no one got a bid in our fraternity without me meeting them. I would sit in a corner, and if you wanted your guy to get in, you came and found me because they were held up until I got to meet them. And then after that deal, I was always a part of their development and the orientation that they got through the new member program. And through that, I developed a fellowship with as such that when it was time to get elected president, that wasn't a hard deal for me to do. And it just kind of evolved from that. It wasn't an ambition I had walking through the door.
Yeah, so we tell undergraduates today that they are the experts on relationship building on campus. The Greek system, they're the experts, and I think that takes them a little bit by surprise. They don't really think of themselves as that, but just in your description of of talking with the guys. You learned how to develop relationships and build a consensus, and that goes with everybody who does that. You don't really lose that. It's like riding a bike, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, when I had the experience of when I got out of the chapter, went to work at Michigan State, I didn't realize the depth of experience that I had and how much deeper it was than most undergraduates. So I got on campus and I was working in a dormitory, and I would wade into situations all the time that were ATO, a Friday night on ATO, no big deal. Kind of discussions with people and handling discipline and getting people to stop doing what they're doing. And all of a sudden I looked around and there was this big gap between what I would do and what others would do. And I underestimated completely the quality of experience I was having as an undergraduate. But because of that, I got promoted within 4 months there. I had my boss come up and said, look, I got a dorm over here and I got a problem and I'm promoted. So I was a full-time, without a degree person with a staff of 25 people. And we were fixing a culture in a bad dorm. And I got that. And I can only attribute that to obviously I played lots of ball through the years. Athletics mattered and all that kind of stuff, but I have always built on that. But my experience of being, my chapter was large. We had a big budget. But those kind of skills and abilities, I love I got a granddaughter who's doing the same thing through her sorority right now. And I told her, honey, you need to do this. You'll be astonished at the difference it makes, and to see her flourish because you go there. So you don't need to go with an ambition to be the president, but you just go with the ambition of, hey, I got a responsibility to make this better. I'm going to do that. That's all of a sudden that makes a big difference in your development. And you will be a relationship expert when you walk out the door. And you will make a difference that all the undergraduates the classmates that are sitting in an apartment with one other roommate versus what you endeavored to do by joining an ATO, a completely different experience, and it sets you up for success as you move ahead.
So you're the HR guy at Pallet One. Now you hired a lot of folks that wouldn't even go to college, but I'm sure you hired some who did. And just in terms of your experience, could you tell a difference between someone who you needed a college graduate or a degree for in terms of hiring someone who had gone through and had been engaged in the Greek system and someone who was not?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, however they got that experience, but certainly someone who's had a great Greek experience comes in armed. And because I'm alert to it, I'll pick up on it, but I've got, I just went to a wedding this weekend. Guy I went to the wedding, went to the Citadel, and he started working for me 35 years ago. So the Citadel, he's been through some stuff. The way I got to know him is I was speaking at an ATO conference in Jacksonville, Florida. You'll remember the one we had to go home early from it. And the day he was walking out, I just kind of chatted him up. And he lived in a place called Walterboro, South Carolina. We had just built a pallet plant there. He called me 2 days later, said, my brother's looking for a job. Do you want him? Would you entertain talking to him? I said, yes. And we put him to work, and he's still with me 35, one of my most trusted teammates, still with me 35 years later, because of a happenstance hallway conversation in a hotel in Jacksonville, Florida. How weird. That's the kind of stuff that goes on. My point being is he knew enough about me to say that might be a good guy to work with. I'm going to try to see if I can figure that out. And we put it all together, and I saw that young man now 35 years older at the wedding too. And it was a great celebration. But the point being is you get to network through this in very many different ways, and you put people to work. And I've hired numbers of people I've met at ATO leadership conferences or supporting my chapter or those kinds of things. And I just absolutely believe in the credential. It says something to me if you've had a great Greek experience that is a stamp on your resume that we don't sell enough probably when we're out there interviewing. You should sell it, but you also got to do something to supporting what you're doing to make it go and get better too. So it's a both and kind of thing.
Right. What do you think it is about the chapter experience in any kind of, I suppose, any kind of leadership, whether you're president or another officer, or you're just going through in the rank and file? What do you think it is about the chapter experience that sort of gives you things that you would not get if you remain independent?
Well, when you're living with somebody like we do, I mean, not everyone has the residence hall. I mean, not has the residence experience, but my experience with the fraternity, man, I was with people who lost their dads. I was with people who had their heart broken. I was with people who were battling addiction issues. You know, I mean, the whole world comes right through there. There's no question about that. But I also part of, hey, goals. Hey, let's win. Let's be the best intramurals program on campus. Let's support our guys so that they can be successful on campus politics. Let's. And the more you have that, then you see what it takes to get stuff done. And now once you understand that, you bring that same juice when you're in that situation, no matter where now you're trying to have your kids' Little League team win the All-Stars, or you're trying to have the best public school system in your community that it can be. You bring that juice all the time once you've seen it and you know what it looks like. I was at a leadership event years ago, and I heard a guy say, I always look for people who have done something well, because once they have tasted that, they'll never be happy until they taste it again. And I have found that to be, he had 3 criteria was, hey, not a couch potato, someone who's reasonably intelligent, and someone who had tasted success. He said, those 3 criteria are what I look for when I'm interviewing somebody. And if you've been in a sound program and you've helped your chapter provide, you've overcome hurdles in terms of COVID, you've gotten the right numbers of members, you've battled with budget, you have handled discipline, you have tried to unify folks, you've seen it done, you've done it yourself, you have real experience in it, and it's unparalleled.
You were a little unusual in that you got involved with the national fraternity on a volunteer level. What prompted you to do that? Because not only did you get started on a volunteer level, but eventually you served on the foundation board of governors, on the board of leadership, and then on the fraternity board a couple of times, eventually becoming national president. So quite a history there. But what initially got you engaged and interested in the national fraternity?
I was working at University of Georgia and my fraternities were my career. And the person who was in your role then, a guy named Steve Siders, reached out to me. He had learned about me. I didn't know him. He said, hey, I need a province chief. That was a job we had in Georgia, where you travel around to the chapters we had at Emory and UGA and Georgia Southern and Mercer. I mean, we had a number of chapters in that area. And so as I got involved in that, there was also the planning. At that time, it was an alumni planned leadership conference every year that would go to Congress. And I got on that committee. And the people that were on that committee did development for a living. And I got exposed to some outstanding people who had great records. And then I was able to use those experiences to take them back to my career, make me better, more effective with my bosses. It was a virtuous cycle for sure. And the more I stayed involved, the more I got asked to do interesting things. I've always enjoyed, I can remember being on a group with you out in Arizona where we were creating a new member program. So I got identified as a talent to be included in those kinds of things. And the more I did that, the more I liked it, the more I did. And other roles came up to eventually I was on the board a few times. I did serve on the foundation board. And then I came back to be national president. So it's been a great journey for me, and made great friends all around the country. It's just been fantastic.
And during your term as national president, COVID hit, and so there was a little bit of time that you were not engaging undergraduates because no one was engaging undergraduates in person. But when you were, what differences did you see in the undergraduates that you were engaging as national president versus thinking back to when you were an undergraduate and working with undergraduates in your chapter? How were they? Some things familiar, I'm sure, but I'm guessing things felt a little different too in terms of how you engaged them and how they responded to you.
I think the good news is I got to mostly engage with the ones who are good. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that, we had to shut down a chapter or two, but usually that's not the role the president plays. I chair the meeting that makes that decision. But the ones I would see, man, what a privilege it is to install a new chapter, or people have worked hard to make a chapter come to life. And that was new. We did that at 7 or 8 places while I was there. And my deep regret is COVID kept us from 7 or 8 others that could have happened. But also, I'd come to the president's meetings and see how that expanded. And the great thing about ATO today is the level of trust I feel like our national fraternity has created with the undergraduate. My colleagues, my friends in the fraternity back in the day didn't have that same high regard, because we didn't get the same quality of service, nor was it as well thought out and as developed. And so the ones I see are clear-eyed and ready to go, and usually a very impressive group. And so I think we appeal to what we do as a national fraternity appeals to a certain kind of person who recognizes the quality they're providing too. And so I see some highly sophisticated thoughts going on amongst those folks about what they can accomplish and what they're capable of. A lot of confidence I see in many of the undergraduates we encounter at those conferences.
Yeah, you're a business leader, a community leader, obviously a leader within ATO. Knowing where the country is right now, very polarized politically, a lot of people wringing their hands. College campuses also polarized to some extent. If you're talking to someone, and I'm sure you probably had these conversations many times with parents whose son is going to go to college and wondering, not knowing really much about the Greek system, whether he should join a fraternity, what benefits in today's world do you see that fraternity would provide, ATO would provide, for an incoming college student whose parents weren't Greek, who really didn't know anything about it, but just from your experience, that it'd probably be a good thing to have, especially in today's world on today's campus. What would you tell those parents?
I'd tell them it's going to equip them in a way the classroom will not. If you just go for the classroom experience, we can all relate to the idea that whatever you learned in a classroom 30 years ago isn't relevant today. I'm carrying around, and we're doing this broadcast on my iPhone, and it has more computer power than my whole college did when I was in school there in 1977. So it's really different. I really feel like the solutions to the world today and how scattered it is and all those kind of stuff come with being able to make human connection and to be where your feet are and make a difference right where you're planted. And again, we're equipping men to be able to make a difference where they are and to do that in a loving, caring way. And so the values that our fraternity teaches and many others do, I'm sure I've only known my ritual, not anybody else's. But at the same time, I'm confident if you live by our creed and by our ritual, you're going to be a positive contributor wherever you go if you intend to do that. And so I would tell them that we're going to be good to them. We're going to teach them the right kind of things. It's a building, nourishing, nurturing organization. And they should have confidence that it's going to change their young person in a way they never expected.
Yeah, and the relevancy of fraternity today versus fraternity when you were an undergraduate today. Some folks are saying, well, it's an old institution. It has time has left it behind. It's a throwback. It's really not relevant to today's college student, given the iPhone. What you said about computer power just being one example. I'm assuming that you think it's still relevant. How do you see it being relevant today to today's students, given everything that they're distracted with and everything they're having to deal with?
Yeah, our creed says our ritual says, and our creed says that we're dealing with things that are eternal, and they are. We believe in a life of high integrity. We believe that trust still matters. We believe that the only way to go through life is to care about others, be generous, and love folks in an unconditional manner, in a way that makes a difference. And that's an outward seeking kind of thing. And so that was real 40 years ago, and it was real in 1865, and it's still real today. And so to equip people with a value set, hopefully they come with that. But on the same token, I love our creed because it gives you a framework for thinking about a situation. Hey, am I binding here today, or am I dividing? I'm going to be an agent for care and love. Am I working? Am I recognizing true merit and respecting people, or am I disrespecting in a way that matters? Am I going to do I believe that I have boundaries that I can't work within, or can I get beyond those boundaries? And for God's sakes, am I sucked up in politics, or am I worried on my kids and our community doing things the right way? Those things, when you go through that thought process and you're an agent for that, you become an agent for reconciliation. You become an agent for love and care. And that's what our world needs more than ever, right where we are too. I don't really worry about national politics as much as I worry about my street and my school and the kids that come up there and the company. So I try to be where my feet are and impact the people I can make a difference with. And I try to teach them to do the same when they roll out. So they're getting, my whole company gets ATO, whether they know it or not. And I'm proud of that. I think it makes a difference in terms of how we function and work.
Great. Well, Howe, thank you for the time today. Thank you for giving us some of your thoughts on today, and thank you for all your service to ATO.
I love it, and I'm grateful, and I can't say enough about what it's meant to me. Thanks, Win.